Hello and welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your weekly dose of the top pro-life news and issues, all from a Catholic perspective. I'm Catherine Hadro in our Washington, D.C. studio. Thanks for joining us. In this week's show, hear how pro-life leader Abby Johnson is reaching out to families in need this Advent season. An abortion activist appears on a comedy show to spout her propaganda uncontested. And this.
Assisted suicide, I believe, is bad because at the end of the day, it takes advantage of the most vulnerable in our society.
We spotlight a couple determined to educate people on the dangers of assisted suicide. But first, as we close in on the final weeks in this Congress, we check in on the status of pro-life goals and what still remains to be done. Joining us now from Capitol Hill is Catholic Congressman Brad Wenstrup of Ohio. Congressman, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
We are just a few weeks away now from having a new Congress and a new year, and that includes a pro-abortion majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. What will your strategy be in 2019 to advance pro-life legislation in a divided Congress?
Well, we're going to have to be as persuasive as we possibly can to bring out the negative aspects that come with abortion and hopefully make our case to some people that might otherwise think differently. It is a challenge, there's no doubt about it. It's better to be in the majority when you have more people that agree with you on any issue, but particularly on this issue. But I think, you know, we need to really make the case for what's ethical, what's right, what are the values of the American people and our country as a whole.
How do you think you will persuade your colleagues who do think differently on this issue of life?
Well, you know, there is some penetration that can be made sometimes. Have a resolution against physician-assisted suicide, for example, certainly a pro-life issue. And we were able to get several Democrats to sign on to this resolution. So you have to kind of work it one person at a time and make your case as to what is ethical or not. And for some people, though, even though they may be pro-choice, which obviously I am not, maybe there's some gains that can be made on certain things that are taking place involved with abortion, such as the use of fetal tissue for experimentation.
What about these next few weeks? Do you see any opportunity to pass pro-life legislation during this lame duck session, such as defunding Planned Parenthood?
Actually, to be quite frank, I wish we could, but I don't necessarily see that happening. And if we did pass it out of the House, which we have done, we have had that issue come out of the House where it's been defunded, but the problem is over on the Senate. And so that's where it's having a difficult time to get to the president's desk. But I do believe the president would sign it if we could get something through the Senate.
I want to continue on with our conversation and let our viewers know that, Congressman, you are also an Iraq War veteran and a medical doctor. How does your medical background specifically shape your pro-life views?
Well, I think it's more my Catholic background than anything else, as much as anything else. But then you add the science to it and what you know as a physician. And to me, it's just the things that we're dealing with. Pro-life is what you should be about as a physician. You know, how can you extend life, make life better for others, and to value the dignity of life. And it's extremely important. So the medical component adds to the Catholic background.
As of this interview, the Department of Health and Human Services is still funding fetal tissue research. Congressman, as a Catholic and a pro-life medical doctor, what's your reaction to the federal funding of research involving the organs and other body parts taken from aborted babies?
Yeah, well, first of all, I find it extremely unethical to begin with, you know, that we would even be engaged in this at all. And I am pleased that HHS has canceled one of the contracts. But NIH is still involved with this, and I think that that's something we need to take a broader look at. And not only that, even if you think this is okay, which I do not, what have the results been? And this has been going on since like 1920, and there's been no clinical treatments that have come out of this. So, you know, even if you take that view that it's okay to do it, which I do not, what are you getting out of it? And so let's take that argument to those that might otherwise think differently from us.
What action specifically would you like to see from the Department of Health and Human Services take on this?
Well, that either they or through Congress that we defund this type of practice from NIH altogether or across the country in any avenue.
Representative Brad Wenstrup of Ohio, Thank you for your time and being with us today.
You bet. Thank you.
For a reaction and more, we're now joined by Chuck Donovan, the president of the Charlotte Lozier Institute. Thanks for being back on the program.
My pleasure, Catherine. Thank you.
What's your reaction to what Congressman Wenstrup just had to say about the challenges pro-lifers will face with a divided Congress?
Well, it's going to be a steep climb with the new Congress. The House of Representatives will not be majority pro-life. The Democratic Party these days is almost barren of pro-life support. So we're going to have to fight to hold on to what we have. But we have to keep in mind that what we have is substantial. We have protections for no federal spending to speak of on abortion. That saves 60,000 lives a year, according to a Charlotte Lozier Institute study. So it's not like you're holding your own ground. You're actually saving lives by preserving those policies. But we'll have to fight to do it.
You are a pro-life public policy expert. If you had to give advice to members of Congress who are entering into this new Congress, what would you tell them? What should they be aware of?
2 or 3 things. One, we have to fight for the continuation of the reform of the federal judiciary. All we're asking for is for the judges to stay out of this debate and allow us to enact and debate pro-life statutes. States are doing it by the hundreds. We've had 400 new pro-life laws in the last 6 years. The states are rejecting Roe v. Wade. We're hoping the court eventually, with these changes, will itself step up at the Supreme Court level and say Roe v. Wade was ill-considered, wrongly decided, and it needs to go by the boards while Americans debate the principles of the sanctity of life. I'd say hold on for the long term.
Speaking of the long term, even just next year in 2019, I want to look at a report, a really important report, the Charlotte Lozier Institute and the Family Research Council put out together, looking at what abortion on demand coverage within the Affordable Care Act looks like next year. Can you tell us about those findings?
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky, but the states were left free to ban elective abortion coverage in what are called the exchange programs. So 26 states did that, but 24 states still allow elective abortion coverage in these plans that are purchased with federal tax subsidies. So Charlotte Lozier Institute and Family Research Council examined every plan, and our goal was to find out and then advise consumers which of these plans cover elective abortion and basically how to avoid purchasing one either intentionally or inadvertently.
And in informing consumers, you helped create an interactive map that looks at some of these plans. Can you tell us about that resource?
Well, it's a very simple resource to use. It's called ObamacareAbortion.com. And until December 15th, when you make your final choice, if you're eligible for one of these health care plans, you click on your state, and you can go right down the list for each health insurance plan and find the ones that don't cover abortion, what we call pro-life plans. They're out there, but not in every state, so you have to be careful.
And I know the Department of Health and Human Services last month issued a new rule to end the hiding of premiums for abortion coverage under Obamacare. What's the status of that rule?
Well, that rule will be finalized about January 8th, and we certainly want people to write the HHS or the White House, very simple to do from their website, and tell them you support this rule. What it means is that the payments for abortion will be separated from your other premiums. If you're stuck with one of these plans, you should at least have those payments separated, and there may be even an opportunity for you to say, I'm not going to pay for that coverage. But it's very important that consumers know what they're buying and the government not hide these subsidies for abortion.
Absolutely. Thank you, as always, for your important insight for our viewers. Chuck Donovan, president of the Charlotte Lozier Institute.
My pleasure, Catherine. Thank you.
The Department of Health and Human Services issued a new rule last month directing insurers selling Affordable Care Act plans that cover elective abortion to collect a separate payment from all enrollees for that coverage. It's required by law. But under the Obama administration, insurers were allowed to collect these payments in a single transfer of funds in violation of clear statutory language. This new rule is a great step from the HHS department, but we need them to finalize it. And that's where you come in for this week's Call to Action. Go to prolifeweekly.com so you can submit a comment in support of the separate payments rule. We have drafted language already to make it easy for you, but you have the freedom to edit the comment and make it your own. Here's why this is important. Requiring an actual separate collection of the abortion surcharge will disincentivize abortion coverage in Obamacare and save lives. It will also ensure premium payers are aware of the abortion surcharge so no one is paying for abortion coverage they don't want. Consumers have a right to know if they are funding abortion coverage, and by demanding the HHS department separate the collection of the abortion surcharge, it will be more clear for consumers. Submit a comment in support of this pro-life rule by going to prolifeweekly.com. Turning now to more pro-life news, it's a major victory for EWTN and religious liberty, as we here at the Global Catholic Network have won a lawsuit over the Obama administration's HHS contraception mandate. After a nearly 7-year legal battle, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals last week vacated a previous negative ruling against EWTN, freeing our network from the HHS contraception mandate's requirement that employers provide contraception, sterilization, and abortifacients in its employee health plan, all of which would be morally objectionable to our Catholic mission. This Advent season, one pro-life leader is teaming up with a Catholic organization to aid children mired in poverty overseas. Abby Johnson is the official spokeswoman for the Cross Catholic Outreach's Box of Joy program. The program provides Christmas gifts packed by Catholic families, churches, and individuals to help children experience the joy of Christmas in places where gifts are rare or non-existent due to poverty. This year, the Box of Joy Ministry will deliver Christmas gifts to Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, Guatemala, and El Salvador. To tell us more is Abby Johnson herself. She's joining us via Skype from Austin, Texas. Abby, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
So why did you first get involved with the Box of Joy program?
Well, I heard about it and through some friends actually who had participated. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. My family would love to do things like this. We've packed boxes for other organizations before. But knowing that this was a Catholic organization made us really excited. And so we got involved that way and just wanted to get some information, and ended up sort of by chance meeting the guys that run the program. And that's essentially how I got involved.
Can you tell us more about the kind of families that Box of Joy serves? What does this program mean to them?
Yeah, so our goal this year is to reach 70,000 children in 5 different countries. And these are children that have probably never received a gift before. They live in poverty. They live in an environment that most of us have never experienced. And so to be able to bring a little bit of joy into their lives through fun things, but also practical things. You know, we pack our boxes with socks and t-shirts and, and also toys and fun things they can play with. So, we just want to try to give joy to these children who live very difficult lives and live very simple lives. And it's just a way for us to give back.
And as pro-lifers, Abby, and as Catholics, what responsibility do you believe we have to get involved with either Box of Joy or other programs that really serve those in need?
Everybody knows I'm a pro-life advocate, but my pro-life advocacy does not end when birth happens. And so, I think for us as Catholics, it's important for us to really, when we talk about being pro-life, that we are pro-life from conception until natural death, and that we serve the needs of those around us. I remember several years ago, my daughter, who just turned 12, she really has a heart for the homeless. And so we wanted to instill and to really help form her heart for the needy. And so we started making these, we call them grace bags. They're just full of items that the homeless could use, could be beneficial to them. And so it's really an important part of who we are as Catholics. It's an important part of who we are as a family. And so I'm really excited to be able to share this opportunity for other Catholic families to get involved and to give.
So even in your own home, you've seen the impact that service can have on your very children.
Absolutely. And, it's incredible because Grace has just always had a heart for people. And we see that rubbing off on other people in our family and her friends and the other other people that she's around, and it's just really beautiful to see. And it's really an evangelization tool as well to live out our faith and to share our faith any way that we can.
Thank you so much for your witness and for sharing more about Box of Joy with us. Abby Johnson, who's speaking to us as the spokeswoman for Cross Catholic Outreach's Box of Joy program. Have a blessed Advent, Abby.
Thank you, you too.
To find out more information on the Box of Joy program, you can visit boxofjoy.org. There you can also find out about the Create a Box online program. And when we come back,
nobody knew about it. Nobody knew it was even in the works. And that really prompted us to start telling people.
A Catholic couple takes the initiative to educate others on the dangers of assisted suicide. Stay tuned as EWTN Pro-Life Weekly continues after this break. December 8th is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, in which we celebrate how the Blessed Virgin Mary was preserved immune from all stain of original sin from the first moment of her conception. Blessed Mother, pray for us. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Catherine Hadro. The abortion activist behind the Shout Your Abortion campaign, Lindy West, recently appeared on Comedy Central, of all places. West said the abortion conversation is mainly driven by those with fringe views. She was talking about us pro-lifers. Take a look for this week's Speak Out segment.
We're all sort of backed into this corner to talk about abortion as like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess it is kind of murder. Like even people who are pro-choice get sort of trapped in that paradigm, which is propaganda.
These comments went unsurprisingly unchallenged by the Daily Show host Trevor Noah. There were a lot of alarming comments made in the 7-minute Daily Show segment, from Trevor Noah taking a knock at the Catholic Church to Lindy West calling the undercover Planned Parenthood videos crazy nonsense. But right now, we'll address the portion we just showed you. The idea that life begins at fertilization is not propaganda. It is scientific reality. The reason West feels backed into a corner is because her pro-abortion narrative contradicts facts. Science tells us that an unborn child has unique, distinct DNA on day one. This DNA is matchless, varying from every other human being that has ever lived or ever will live. Science tells us that the child is a separate human being. Therefore, abortion does end a life because it eliminates that separate and distinct human being. This interview took place on Comedy Central's The Daily Show, which has its own history of offensive abortion propaganda, for which they've faced heavy criticism already. So it's not surprising Lindy West's claims went unchecked, like the claim that pro-lifers hold fringe views. Marist polling from this very year alone shows that more than 3/4 of Americans would limit abortion to at most the first 3 months of pregnancy. The pro-life movement, Miss West, is on the right side of history, and you are welcome anytime. Remember, there is always something you can do at home to counter today's culture of death. Follow this week's call to action. Go to prolifeweekly.com to submit a comment in support of the separate payments rule, so the hidings of premiums for abortion coverage under Obamacare will come to an end. And finally, we go to this week's Pro-Life Focus and introduce you to a Maryland Catholic couple who launched a new grassroots initiative to fight the legalization of physician-assisted suicide. Here's that story. In the middle of Maryland, locals recently filled a Catholic church hall to watch a documentary on a very important topic.
I appreciated it very much because I feel it's a very serious subject, and I've known people that have taken their life that way.
I thought it was wonderful. I was very impressed because it's something that people need to know. They need to learn about what is happening, and we need to educate them and show this film, get it around.
This film focuses on what's an increasingly alarming trend: the push to legalize physician-assisted suicide, which would permit doctors to prescribe life-ending drugs to people with a terminal illness.
The assisted suicide movement has done something that I think is quite insidious. They have co-opted the word compassion, as if giving an overdose of poison, because that's what we're talking about, is somehow compassionate.
The 30-minute documentary shining the light on physician-assisted suicide untangles many of the lies from the assisted suicide lobby. It includes interviews with a range of medical experts and people who would potentially be vulnerable to physician-assisted suicide legislation.
I'm here to tell you, as a disabled man, it's not a terrible life.
Behind the film are an unlikely pair of producers.
They have 14 full-time fundraisers at their national office.
Tom and Laura Jones never planned to become filmmakers, but the Catholic Maryland couple grew concerned about assisted suicide legislation and felt called to take action. Laura saw firsthand the need that exists for people who oppose the culture of death to be in on these conversations after she attended a local meeting on assisted suicide.
What I saw was a room full of people wearing the stickers that said, "My life, my death, my choice." And the room was filled with people that were supporting that type of legislation. And there was nobody really there to counter it.
The family's personal connection to the issue was another motivating factor to get involved.
I've had two parents who had a 6-month prognosis, which would have made them eligible to receive these lethal prescriptions. My father lived for 10 beautiful, joy-filled years. I got to see the birth of 2 more grandchildren. In fact, we see him in the video. And then also my mother is still with us, and she's now 4 years past, her 6-month prognosis.
The Joneses created the group The Dignity Mandate to provide educational resources on social issues that impact human dignity, with a principal issue on opposing physician-assisted suicide.
Every place where there is a red square, that is a state where this has been legalized.
Physician-assisted suicide is already legal in 7 states and the District of Columbia. Proponents are heavily targeting other states, including Maryland. This married couple travels around the state to share their half-hour documentary at local community centers and answer crowd questions on the topic. It's a strategy intended to counter the pro-assisted suicide group, Compassion and Choices.
Physician-assisted suicide is not the answer, certainly not the answer. And I think the documentary made it clear that there is mental health service, there is true compassion from families and friends to support the person through the tough time so that they don't have to turn to something like physician-assisted suicide.
The documentary shining a light on physician-assisted suicide takes just as long to watch as a TV sitcom and can be found for free online. The film's director hopes it leaves viewers with a mobilizing message.
Most people don't even really know that this kind of a bill is being tried to get passed in the Maryland State Legislature. So the first thing is, hey, this is going on, and then to try and talk to their friends and call their county councilman or their senator or whoever, mayor, governor, write emails, letters, telling them how, what a bad idea this is.
Tom Jones feels a personal responsibility to activate the grassroots on this issue.
Assisted suicide, I believe, is bad because at the end of the day, it takes advantage of the most vulnerable in our society, right? It takes advantage of those people who are sick, who are depressed, who are lonely, who might be struggling with the thought of what is this going to do to my personal finances if I try and live a little bit longer. I mean, it really, if you think about that, and as Christians, as Catholics, it is, our calling to protect the weak, right? Protect the widows and the poor and the needy. I think this speaks right to that calling that all of us have as Christians. Protect the vulnerable.
The pastor of Maryland's Holy Family Catholic Church, which hosted a recent viewing, reiterates the calling we have as Catholics to get involved in building a culture of life.
Catholics always speak for the disenfranchised, for the vulnerable, whether it's the unborn or the elderly or the poor. And I think this is one of those issues where it really dovetails who are we really speaking for about compassion if we allow this to happen, and what are the impacts it's going to have on society and how we handle people in crisis healthcare situations.
From concerned citizens to Catholics in action, this Maryland couple hopes their local involvement will make a greater impact.
If you want to watch the Dignity Mandate's half-hour documentary against a physician-assisted suicide, simply go to thedignitymandate.org. That does it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, but I'd love to hear from you before next week. Email me at prolifeweekly@ewtn.com or like my public page on Facebook so we can keep this pro-life conversation going. Remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.